give you an image of a single-celled organism compared to the whole planet. That the single-celled organism is really only aware of its immediate environment. Well, we're the single-celled organism. And in fact, we're not even the single-celled organism, because our Earth is a consciousness. The same way that we think that our body is we're one consciousness. But every single cell in our body is an individual organism. It can function on its own. It has mitochondria and all these things in it. It's a separate consciousness. That's why you can take the heart out of something and it keeps beating, because it's still got a consciousness about it, and parts of the body will still move. They have this residual consciousness. But over the top of that, we have an imposed consciousness of ourself. Okay, so we control all of these individual things. We're the head of it all. Well, Gaia, Earth consciousness, is the same. It controls all the consciousnesses on the planet. And the Sun, because the Sun is 99% of the mass in our solar system, it is the overseeing consciousness that controls all the planets and all the things in our solar system. Well, our solar system is a blip in the Milky Way galaxy. And the Milky Way galaxy has a consciousness that oversees all of the solar systems in our Milky Way galaxy. And our Milky Way galaxy is part of a local cluster of galaxies which has a consciousness. And that local cluster has a consciousness. And that local cluster is part of an even bigger and bigger and bigger. So where does it all end? Specifically relevant to us, there is a galactic federation, for want of a better term, which is a group of 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th dimensional existences who oversee what happens in this galaxy. And the overriding rule is that free will must apply. That no one is allowed to interfere with the free will of any being. Everyone is allowed to express whatever they want to express. That does not negate cause and effect. Okay, if you jump in a fire, you get burnt, cause and effect. If you kill someone, someone may retaliate against you. You know, there's cause and effect. If you break your arm because you do things, there's cause and effect. There's not right or wrong. The higher consciousnesses have this guardianship to ensure that free will happens. But they understand, for instance, that the Drakos are playing the role they have to play as the bad guy, because we see ourselves as a good guy, and so they allow that to happen. It's more, the galactic federations are more funnels of consciousness. Does that make sense? That the information funnels in oneness. So even though it's oneness, there are levels of perception that you can choose to see things. Okay, sorry, I'm just getting images coming through. You can stand and look out of the window of the first floor of a skyscraper and you will see certain things. You can take the elevator up to the 10th floor and now you can see more. You can go right to the very top and you can see everything. So your perception will change, and what you can see and be aware of changes depending on where you shift your perception to. And all of these different dimensional levels and the federations are all levels of perception. And they allow the play to unfold at different levels. It's like a play within a play within a play within a play within a play. And it's all allowed to unfold at that dimensional level. And we've seen films of plays within plays. Well, that's a level upon a level upon a level. What was the one? Inception? Perfect example of how things work at those dimensional levels. Most definitely. Look, this is a really exciting time to be here. Some of these beings, they merely just have to think and they're here, because time-space does not exist to them once you get to those dimensional levels of existence. Some beings, though, are still in three-dimensional form and fourth and fifth dimensional form. That's why we have solid UFOs And we have light ships. There's different. Some are three-dimensional, some are fifth-dimensional means of transport. So the more, the light ships, for instance, they need to travel at the speed of light, and the other ships, they use different physics to get here. So some of the beings who have a vested interest in what's happening on the planet or is about to happen, this is a really exciting time to be here. Okay, this is a very exciting time, not because of what's going to happen to the planet per se, because that happens fairly regularly, it's no big deal. But what is a big deal is the shift of consciousness that's happening. That's really interesting to watch. And they want to make sure that this human consciousness, which has been a byproduct of this hybridization, okay, the consciousness that you and I have is a hybridized form. So it's created something quite extraordinary and new. Emotions. Emotions that can generate music, can generate literature, can generate art. This is new. This is why the human race is something quite extraordinary, because there's the detrimental aspects of emotions, but there's also this other amazing stuff. So they want to come through because this is exciting, but they want to be careful that they don't allow a virus in that can affect all of these other things. So there's very much a possibility that the human race will be admitted to the next dimensional level, but with conditions, like a quarantine parole period, to see whether, you know, it's like border control. Well, let's let them in, but let's keep them isolated to see whether there's any infection, cross-infection goes on, or is it going to be all purely good? Well, that's what everyone's caught up with. They've got caught up with this idea that we have to ascend to fifth dimension. And the perspective is to understand you're all dimensions. Because if you're oneness, there is only one spectrum, and it's all connected. But it depends on where you choose to view it from. Now, people who are choosing to think that they're this drop of water separated from the ocean will then think they have to make a journey back to the ocean, not understanding that they have all of the contents of the ocean in them. You know, I can say to someone, okay, they're giving me an image. Let's say we've got the ocean, and the ocean is God, which is all dimensions. And then I take a massive bathtub load of water out of it, and I go, okay, that's seventh dimension. And then I take a small bucket, and I take a bucket out of the tub, and I go, okay, there's fifth dimension. And then I take an eyedropper, and I take a drop of water out of the bucket, or out of the cup, and I go, okay, there's third dimension. See, they're all part of the one, but it all degrees on where your perspective of separation is. So fifth dimension, you can't ascend to the fifth dimension because you already are fifth dimension. You're already seventh dimension. You're already 10th dimension. You can be whatever dimension you think to create. You can create 1 billion dimensions if you want. And they all exist if you create them, because that's what Source is doing. Just pure thought. So it creates, you know, fractals? And you just keep going in and keep going in and keep going in and keep going in, and they just keep repeating over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's not bad at all, it's essential. Because it's the very first thing that Source did. Is it separated from itself to create the absence of itself, so it had a mirror and a duality. It's the absolute essential mirror, separation. But it doesn't mean you have to stay there. It just means at the maximum point of separation, you have the maximum amount of conflict. Therefore, you have the greatest scope for experience. Separation is neither bad nor good. But the function of separation is to give you the maximum experience of not being connected to love. See, if you say to Source, I want to be rich, Source says, okay, I'll make you poor first. Because you need to know what it's like to be poor before you can appreciate what rich is. Oh, I need to know what it is to be healthy. Okay, well, we need to make you unhealthy first so that you have a contrast. Because if you don't have a contrast, you have nothing to compare it to. You don't know what healthy is. You don't know what happy is. You don't know any of these things until you've had the contrast. Well, the more separation you create, the greater appreciation you have for what it is to be totally in oneness. But it's that separation that creates all of the scale of level of experience. It's just an enrichment. So when people are totally separated, they're at the maximum level of conflict, maximum level of fear, maximum level of experience. They'll get sick of it eventually, which is exactly what happens to people. They get sick of it and bored with it, and they want to come back to be happy. I don't want separation. I want us all to be one. I want to do, because they're now bored with that. But because now they can have a full appreciation of this. There is no evolution. Probably, if you're going to use a word close to that, it's devolution, because you devolve down to the third dimension to experience. It's like a yo-yo, down and then back up again. And then on the way back up, you absorb all the experience and you plug it into the computer. So it all gets fed back up in again. From the consciousness perspective, look, we don't evolve. Evolution implies linear time. Okay? And there is no linear time. Everything is simultaneous. And if everything is simultaneous, there can be no evolution. Does that make sense? Okay? Everything just is. This moment is only connected to the moment that just passed because you choose to perceive it is. If I shoot a film 24 frames a second, okay, this frame is only connected to the one that follows it because they've been put in a line. If I chop them all up individually and put them in the can, every single frame is there. Independent. They're not connected at all. It's only if you choose to connect them that you can get a film. But let's say I randomly put all of those images back together and I play them through the film. Every single image is still there, but now they're random. And now it doesn't seem to make any sense. Doesn't seem to make any sense unless you have a higher perspective that can see that all of those frames are independent. The current public perception is of a date, December 21st, 2012, of the people who are aware of that date. So when you say 2012 to people, most people say, oh, that's supposed to be the end of the world. That's sort of the general layman person. The people who are slightly more informed will talk about Revelations, the end of the world. They'll know the date, December 21st, 2012. And then you get into the spiritual people who talk about it being, it's a point of ascension. So they all have a perspective based on a date. The date itself is a fallacy, doesn't exist. And it comes from a paganism aspect, which is about the winter solstice date. And it actually has no relevance whatsoever. It's been plucked out of the air. It's not in the Mayan calendar. It's called desensitization. Is the more that you play these images to people, the more people get desensitized to it. So whenever earth changes start to happen, and you tell them it's just some other reason, they're desensitized to the real reason, so therefore they don't notice it. The truth is that there is a brown dwarf that has an orbit around our sun. It's been part of the binary system of our sun since its very formation. Has a number of planets around it. And it's coming through in a very close path with our Earth. And that close path is in September this year, 2 months away from where we are now. And it will cause massive Earth changes. It will break down our protective shield. We will be bombarded with cosmic radiation, earthquakes on a scale that you can't even comprehend, wildfires. The surface temperature of the planet will go up to 60 degrees, probably even more. All the volcanoes will erupt, ones that have been dormant for however many years. Tidal surges, tidal waves. The moon will get pulled out of its orbit. The Earth will get pulled out of its orbit. We will go through an asteroid tail that's being pulled in behind it. We're talking about massive global geographic changes that happen on a regular basis on this planet. It's not that is the physical thing that's going to happen, and it is happening in the next